We're live. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining for this afternoon edition of another episode. We have Sarah with us today, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. And today we're going to be talking all about breath work. It's something I'm learning about. It's pretty new to me. So I'm excited to just help other people learn more. So, Sarah, if you could introduce yourself, tell us what you do for work, what you do for fun, and what decade of life you're in.
I love that. Yeah, I'm Sarah Hutcherson. One hat I wear is as a breath coach. So I help busy doers slow down and take a breath. And that looks like everything from workshops to classes to one-on-ones. And it's the breath for me is just so I can talk more about my personal journey with it, but I think that's what brings each person to breath usually is a journey that they've had where they can't breathe.
Mhm.
And then you're like, there's this beautiful tool I have access to 25,000 times a day. Why can't I use it to support my ability to live? So that's how I approach the breath. In terms of season of life, I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna be 35 in a couple months or in a month. So I guess
Yeah.
I'm entering my mid-30s, but I would say I'm entering a rooting time. I've been through my 20s were a lot of for like us many, just trying different things, living a life I thought I should live versus what I
Mhm.
wanted. And now I'm finding that groove and finding that momentum. So
I love it. And what do you like to do for fun?
oh, well, I love to get outside, so, definitely whether that's out hiking with my pup. I have a little Ewok puppy, um, she makes Ewok noises, Star Wars for everyone.
So cute.
And then I love to fly fish, um, and yeah, hang out with friends, make ice cream, read. So, definitely I'm a bookworm, a little introverted, so yeah.
So fun. Is there good fly fishing around here?
There is,
Yeah?
yeah, it's like so, there's these so if you look on Google Maps, there's blue lines, and those are the
Mm.
rivers and streams, but blue line fishing is the best, that's what's coined because it's the lines that a lot of people will overlook, and there's
Oh.
a lot of those around here, and then there's, like, tiny little trout that are in there that they'll be hiding under the rocks, and they'll come up for the fly, and then
Mm.
yeah, it's cool, and fish live there's that saying, like, "Fish live in the most beautiful places," which they do, so it's an excuse to, like, get outside, put my ankles in water, and
Yeah.
just commune with the nature.
Oh, that's so fun. I love that.
Yeah, so it's fun.
Really cool. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks again for being here. So, tell us about breath work because obviously we're all breathing, otherwise, we wouldn't be alive. There's
Mhm.
so much in the wellness space right now. People are finally really starting to talk about
Awesome.
breathing and nervous system and HRV. And I know that's something you and I have talked about.
Mhm.
So, just introduce us a little bit. What should everyone know? And what information should everyone at least start with about conscious breathing or breath coaching or breath work?
Yeah, oof. I would say with the 2 things in my journey is I've learned, is, like, yes, we breathe all the time. We respire, right? And there's different
Mhm.
levels of respiration from external to cellular respiration.
Mhm.
And breath work is kind of that bridge between each one to help the body work more efficiently in each of those different types of respiration. So, there's both like a mechanical component, right? Like, how are the muscles moving? Because our lungs aren't muscles, right? They move by other muscles. So, there's that portion. And then you have like the chemistry piece of it, the chemical reactions happening. And that has a lot to do with that oxygen coming in, carbon dioxide coming out, how that oxygen is delivered to tissues. And so there's like people will be like, oh, that's like, I don't want to think about that, right? In terms of like when I'm breathing, I just want to breathe and feel better. But understanding kind of the layered approach of how like changing the anatomy, if you will, of how you breathe will also affect how the chemistry of that breath helps you feel differently, right? So we can get
Yeah.
stuck on a breath stress loop. So if you want to practice it now,
Mhm.
if we're stressed, where does the breath go? it goes up in the body. The
Yeah.
shoulders come up, you're shallow breathing, over breathing, and then that's gonna perpetuate, more of feelings of overwhelm, feelings of anxiety, right? But then if we can bring the breath down the body or just it that's talked a lot about in the yogic space, and that's beautiful, but it's even more of just, like, be able to breathe into our armpits, breathe into the back body, just notice it and start to slow down the breath. That's the biggest piece because we all kinda overbreathe all day. Um, that's when we can start to shift that chemical process and then in turn start to feel a little bit calmer, a little bit more resilient, or at least just less overwhelmed. So,
Yeah, I love that. It's an accessible tool. I want to ask about your background too, but like this is so powerful, so accessible, zero barrier to entry.
yeah.
Why aren't doctors talking about this? You know, doctors weren't even meaningfully talking about nutrition until I had already started my career, and it's only been 15 years or so. Like,
Yeah. Why aren't
so
they talking
we're
about
so behind.
nutrition, do you think? Why?
Why weren't they? Because it
Yeah,
wasn't a billable service, and
exactly.
prescriptions ruled the roost. Okay, okay, so you just made me answer it.
Yeah.
That's why they're not talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me, like, I have a background in sustainability, and in that, we talk a lot about, like, natural capital and
Mhm.
what's the value of a tree or what's the value of an open space. And it's traditionally in capitalism not been valued, right? So you have to create that value.
Mhm.
Um, and similarly, I think with nutrition, with the breath, it's something that isn't a moneymaker there.
Right.
Um, and also it's time. I think that's the other currency we don't talk a lot about too with the breath is
Yeah.
it does take a practice. It takes time to like slow down, take a few breaths. And with how, visits are designed, especially like family doctors, it's, how many minutes can I have? And then I also want to have more people. So it's like that fine line. Um, so I think that would be it, right? I mean, I'm not a doctor, so but that would be
Yeah.
my take
Yeah,
on it.
no, for sure.
And I mean, a big thing for me is, and I think we talked about this a little bit before, was like how there's prescriptions for food, right? You can get like a food RX in different spaces. And that would be a dream is like, how do you get a breath RX? Like,
Yeah.
okay. And there are, different countries that have that where they prescribe going to sit under a tree. I know,
Yeah.
I think it was Sweden that just announced something about that, and I'm pretty sure in Japan, right, the practice of Shirin-yoku is very prevalent.
Yeah. That's
S
forest bathing, right?
Yes, forest bathing, right, so just being and that varies in terms of how it's taught, but it's being outside for I think it's about, like, at least 30 minutes, practicing slowing down, sitting with the tree. There's usually, like, a tea component, which is
Mm.
really beautiful. But, yeah, to answer your question, I think it comes back to just how what we have valued, right, in our system, and then if you think of systems that kinda just builds on each other, even if the intention is there, from practitioners, from doctors, it's just slowly unraveling the system that has been created.
Yeah, so well said, good point. The answer is right there, it's just a depressing one. And also,
Yeah,
like, they
it
don't
is.
know about it, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's no and it's like, but how do we put into practice, right? Because I think, from their perspective, I know, like, they have so many patients, they're feeling overwhelmed. Um, and so how do we get this, like, the shift, right? Like, that
Yeah.
which the breath is really great at creating the space of, like, responding versus reacting.
Yeah.
How can you have that in, like, the medical system and have the space to be like, "Okay, I feel all these things are very real," and I think part of it too is continuing to build the connection, and I know within nutrition too, it's similar of, like, the mind-body connection is there, right? And around pain, around inflammation, and continuing to show and have the studies and the meta reviews of, like, when you have, an emotional reaction, pain can be part of that process, and that doesn't make it any less real than if you fell, skiing and tore your ACL. They're both
Right,
pain.
right.
And so that's the other piece I think sometimes where if there's not the physical component of being seen, it's sometimes hard for people to wrap their brain around, like, the importance of it. And breath is
Yeah.
very much it's not visible unless you're outside in the
Right.
cold and you're doing so,
Right, right, or
yeah.
blowing a balloon, yeah, and
Yeah.
it feels woo-woo, you know, like, I've talked
Mhm.
about on here before and openly share with people, like, I was very conventionally educated in the Western, um like medical system of allopathic medicine and pharmaceuticals and institutionalization and a lot of ugly things that I don't agree with, and becoming like further along in my career and being much more open to how like it just I knew it never sat right, but
Mhm.
like learning so much about all of these different modalities is so incredibly empowering, which is why I love having people on and talking about this and learning more. But like, do you encounter that when you're like, I specialize in breath work, and people are like, well, why do I need, like, people even say that about nutrition, like, I
Yeah,
don't
you're
want to,
like,
like, like, I don't want to eat better. I'm like, alrighty, cool. Like, take care of yourself, do your best,
Mhm.
bye. But like, do you hear that? Like, how do you
Oh,
approach it?
yeah.
And like,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, I think, well, like you said, right, we breathe all the time. That's the biggest one I get. I'm like, "Well, I'm already breathing, like, I'm alive," the quippy, um,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is very sweet, and I get that, but I th it's kinda well, it's like anything, right? With any business, it's like meeting the customer who's ready to go and is usually the
totally.
customer that's a little bit more of that innovator, a
Hmm.
little bit more curious, right? And, like, if you have the graph of that, they're down here, and then we wanna get to the mainstream where everyone's like, "Okay, I've seen these, like, thousands of people do it, I'll try it now." And
Yep.
I think, like you're saying with breath, that's starting to happen. There are different influencers, people that are more mainstream that are touting it. Like the book by James Nestor, Breath,
Hmm.
was one of the book. It was like the book club book for Barnes and Noble. Like in January, I saw like the nonfiction. And I was like, that's
Oh,
awesome,
that's
because like
nice.
Barnes and
Good.
Noble, like people are gonna be like, all right, this is I'm seeing it. He's a journalist. He has the backing.
Yeah,
Um,
it's legitimate.
yeah, and then you have, what's her name? Hoda, I can never I forget her last name, but she
Oda
was that.
Kaffi, Oprah's
Yes.
friend? Yeah.
Yeah, so she got really into the breath, and everyone was like, "Oh, okay." Like, so just little
Yeah,
pieces like
it needs
that,
to
and
get
that's
introduced.
for that consumer behavior shift of, like, anything. Same with breath,
Yeah,
same with nutrition, I feel like, so.
yeah, so true. So what do people come to you for? Like, what is the most common thing that you help support people with when they're like, "I wanna try this new modality, I've heard of it." What's, like, their chief issue?
I would say anxiety, which is very apropos.
Mm, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, anxiety, overwhelm, and then pain as well is another one, and that's
Mm,
because my personal journey of the breath came into my life very prevalent when after COVID, after my first bout, and then just like the long COVID such happened, and then
mm,
all these other dominoes fell, in my health, and I was like, I need something. What can I do to get my release? I used to exercise all the time, and I didn't have that.
yeah,
So those are so people will come to me when they're facing kind of like that as well, some chronic pain questions. And I think the more it's talked about, people are like, oh, anxiety isn't, it may be in my head, but that doesn't mean it's not real, right? And it's really, if we
yeah,
learn with like, think about the vagus nerve, it's made up of 80,000 spindles of these beautiful individual nerves, kind of like a phone cable, right? They're communicating up. 80% of that communications from the body up, only 20% is down from the brain. And so that's another reason people will be like, I've heard something about this vagus nerve. Like, what is that? And then they're curious because they've reached the point where maybe they're done with trying medicine or they want to try a different approach because
yeah,
they're frustrated, right? I think we each
mhm,
reach a level where um, we want to try something different. And as much as I wish like I had realized like before I got burnt out that I didn't need to get burnt out to like recover, I think it's
yeah,
that human journey, right, that we see over and over again.
mhm,
So it's when someone reaches that human journey of like, I'm done suffering without knowing how to like help myself, right, and build that
mhm,
toolkit
mhm.
um, to take care of me. And that's the part that I love about the breath. Because yes, obviously, I mean, I'm teaching, right? There is that exchange at first, but after a couple sessions, I mean, that's you can go do that on your own, right? And it's learning
Mhm.
how it's behavior of the breath, right? Yes, you respire all day, but behaving and taking 6 minutes to breathe, taking, your water break and remembering to do 4 box breaths. That type of thing is so powerful. And then as you do it over the course of 6 to 8 weeks, that usually is a sweet spot. That's when you start to see the shifts in the body, lower blood pressure, lower heart rate, lower self-reported anxiety and worry. Um, and then people are like, "Oh, I'm bought in, right? I got it." And then,
Yeah, yeah.
they maybe have an experience of doing it one-on-one or in a yoga class that sometimes helps people too.
Mhm.
So it's interesting just to see, like, the why for someone to decide to jump into the breathwork piece.
Yeah, yeah. Do you wanna share anything more about your background? So you didn't necessarily, like, start out in your career saying, like, "I wanna work with breath." It took an experience for you to say, "I need a modality that can help me right now because there's a crisis at hand."
Yeah, oh, totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so I think,
Yeah.
um, it's interesting because, yeah, so my background is journalism, sustainability, communications. It's always centered around consumer behavior, like, I've
Ah,
always been very intrigued, like,
very
why does
interesting.
someone do something?
Yeah.
Um And I then have taught yoga since 2010, and I came to
Mm.
yoga after, getting really sick while playing basketball and deciding to stop playing college basketball and then moving into that. So it's like where I go in terms of it, there's always a moment, and then I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna dive in and learn," and then want to share it and teach. Um,
Mhm,
and so, yeah, so I have that yogic background where the breath pranayama is one of the limbs.
mhm.
Um it's fascinating though, because the more I learn about breath through the lens of like, okay, mechanical, chemical, there are some beautiful parts about yogic breathing, but also sometimes I can even increase more of that response of um, anxiety or more shallow breathing, which is linked to that overwhelm. So it's a practice, right? There's no right or wrong. Like I think that a lot of people are like, there's a right way to breathe. It depends on your body where it's at in that day, like anything.
Mhm.
And so I've learned just to kind of like meet bodies where the bodies are at. I don't know if you
Yeah,
ever feel that way with nutrition, but like
for
this is where we
sure.
are.
Mhm.
But to answer your question, yeah. And then from there, I've done different specific trainings. It's been about 5 years, 4 years of the breath specific trainings online, in person, and then also doing personal training, looking at getting that certification just for more of the anatomy piece. That
Mhm.
made me just want to understand, like, okay, what are the chains that are involved? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kinda how I come at it, and if I don't know something, it's like, I don't know it, like, that's okay, and I think
Mhm.
going back to the healthcare piece, um, I think it's really important, like, you think of your healthcare team. This
Yeah.
was something that I didn't really think about, but when I was studying for the NASM CPT, it was like, the personal trainer is part of your healthcare team, and I was like, "But what about a breath coach?" Right? That's what I
Yeah.
see myself as, and it's like that is something that we have to there's health coaches that's growing, it seems like, in the
Mhm.
healthcare system where people then have that advocate, that ally to kinda
Mhm.
navigate all these different barriers. Um and then to me, it's like, okay, add a breath coach in. It doesn't have to be forever, right? Have that for
Right.
a couple months.
Yeah.
And then you build that behavior that then will help you in the other aspects of your healthcare system.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Is there anything else we should know about the vagus nerve? I mean, it's so,
It's like the
um
hot topic.
yes, like, give us, like, a few pieces. Like, what you already said is really, really cool and good to visualize. I like the way you said it.
Yeah.
What are some other ways besides breath that we can, like, calm ourselves down or really tap into our vagus nerve?
Well, we can tap.
Tapping.
Yeah, that's why I took my glasses off. Love
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So yeah, if you want, we can do it right
Okay,
now
let's
and
do it.
you can kind of trace
Okay.
it. So, we'll just start on the front of the face and then we'll move to where it is. But I just like to tap here. Eyes can be soft. Sometimes if you close them too quickly, you're just continuing to grip like you were staring. Then you'll bring your fingers behind kind of that sub ox area right at the base of the skull. And then you can bring it forward to the chin and then up into the ears. And then you want to, on that hard part, the tragus is nice, a beautiful spot to say hello to that vagus. It's where the vagus, parts of the vagus nerve, right, it's wandering, are very close to the surface of the skin. And then you can bring it
Mm.
down. So if you see there are a lot, keep tapping, just exploring. But if you see there are a lot of like vagus nerve stimulators, a lot of them have it to do with the ears. And that's because that's where most like some of the nerves are living for the vagus nerve. And then you can come on down, say hello. Or then you have these other, vagus nerve is one of 12 cranial nerves. So you have 11 other cranial nerves and they come down as well into you have the esophagus, the larynx, right? So a lot of times people will talk about the voice and the vagus nerve. That can be a little questionable about the correlation there, but it's interesting. And then we'll just kind of land, we'll bring the fingertips down to the chest, right? Especially over that left side, because that vagus nerve is very important for that heart. In terms of, so we have certain fibers of it that run through that come into contact with that heart and that it helps. Without that vagus nerve, you wouldn't have a slower heart rate, right? And that's a big piece
Mm.
of why breath work works so well for that heart rate, for the blood pressure. And then come on down. Did you want
What
to
is
come
it?
tap?
You can keep instructing our audience and I'll
Yes,
go to
go 10. Okay. Then you'll bring your hands on down to the belly, above the belly button. And more, the different research is looking at kind of the correlation or connection between vagus nerve and then the enteric nervous system. And that's still a big question mark out there, right? We talked a little bit about this, but that it is a big piece of that autonomic nervous system. But it's just, there's still more to be found there. So we'll bring the tapping back up or just start to notice the breath. And then we'll tap on the back on the upper traps. Mm. And you also bring the tap to the front of the throat. And then you can just tap around the eyes. And then we'll just let the hands come on down. So that was a little bit of a tour of the vagus. And
so helpful. I want to just keep doing it. This whole episode is making me feel calm,
oh, I needed that.
which is
Oh, good.
nice.
It's my favorite.
Yeah.
Honestly, I find I do that one a lot, and that just it helps, right? That vibration, that's part of it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think too, it's like your brain has to come in when you feel the touch, right? That's that sensory piece,
Right.
right? You're starting to build that
Yeah.
proprioception plus the interoception, the awareness of inside. And so like a good practice too, that's heart specific, but is like learning to breathe with your heartbeat. So finding your heartbeat, whether that's on your wrist or if you want to do behind your ear, wherever on your hand on heart, and you use those heartbeats to guide the breath. So it can inhale for 10 heartbeats, exhale for 10. And I find
Oh,
it's like really difficult. I forget the name. It's always some Scandinavian, but he anyway has like this cool test around it where it's like, what's your interoceptive ability here? And I was like, oh my God, I cannot feel my heartbeat. Like
wow.
I can
Yeah.
breathe with my breath, like I can like get that in, counting there, but slowing it down even more to the heartbeat, I'm like, oof, baby. So that's a really good one too. And I love that you can then bring just like the touch there too to the heart as well.
Right.
So
Oh, that's such a wonderful, and that took 2 minutes.
2 minutes, yep, and then you
Okay.
add a few breaths to that. Always extended exhale is nice if you're feeling, like, elevated in terms of
Hmm.
more of that sympathetic fight or flight energy. Um, and a lot of what I'm exploring now too is around fascia and, like, lymph system too.
Yeah.
Because and then that connection to with how well vagus nerve, other nerves are functioning, right? Like, what is that the synapses, how are those working? The spindles in the skin, so that's, like, another piece, I think, with the breath that we sometimes forget about is that it is a lymph mover. Um,
Mm.
every time you're moving up and down with that diaphragm, you're getting some movement going, and when you can get it to move full range versus being stuck, that's gonna help with that pumping too.
Wow. Yeah, so connected.
Yes, there's a lot
And
of
so
it's like never
exciting.
ending. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
cool. It's so cool.
Yeah, this I think we probably both agree that we try to take this angle where like this can feel really overwhelming, but it's also really just so empowering
Yeah.
because these are things we can tap into without a doctor referral, without a prescription.
Yeah.
The information's out there, and these are things that it just gives us another angle and another thing to think about and another way to kind of challenge the status quo and like question the systems that are failing so many of us.
Mhm.
It's really, really cool.
And help you navigate those systems too, I think is important. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
yeah, I know that that's like a big thing for me when I used to get really anxious going to the doctor when I was trying to figure out what was going on with the
Yeah.
post-COVID stuff and, like, not believing I was like, "I'm fine, I'm young, what's wrong?" But learning to be able to practice breath work in the seat like, waiting area while waiting for the doctor in the exam room, that in itself is when you're talking about that idea of, like, resilience, the idea
Yeah.
of self-advocacy, it's pretty cool because you can be like, "Alright, I
Yeah.
can come into this, and yes, I'm nervous, yes, I'm anxious." It's not about feeling those things, but it's about allowing it to be there and then stepping into like, at least for me, it was stepping into my most empowered self.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I can tell. That's so, so cool. So where do you think if someone's listening to this and this is like their intro to the
Mhm.
concept of breath work, where should someone start?
I would start with there's usually, like, 3 different ways, but the first one I would say is counting your breaths for 2 minutes. Um, so let me see, because 'cause I'm on my phone, let me put a thing we can practice, we can do 1 round for 60 minutes or 60 seconds, not 60 minutes. Well, that would be very nice.
Who
I
has the
actually
attention
I
span for
actually
that?
I actually did that for a class. I was teaching, like, a 30-minute class pranayama meditation, and I was like, "Oh, we're gonna just practice counting the breath for, like, this whole time because I was like, "This would drive
Wow.
me." I'm not I like to control the breath, which shows what I am inclined to, right? I like to make it long,
Yeah.
short hold, but just awareness with the count, oof, that tests me, and so I was like, "Well, I think it's time to do that."
Yeah.
And the reason why we wanna do this is when you can so one of the indicators you talked before about heart rate variability, right?
Yeah.
Another indicator that more and more research is showing about, like, what's my if you have your Aura Ring, your Apple Watch, they have, like, the readiness score, right?
Yeah.
That's it's your own body's version of a readiness score, right? Like, what is my
Yeah.
stress level today? And if you have a high breathing rate, even if you're like, "I'm fine, I'm good," there is a stress happening in your body, and what is stress, right? It's your body's perception of, like, there's something outside of me that I'm not able to adapt to. And so,
Yeah.
like, even if you cognitively think you're chill, that breath being a little bit faster means those body systems are gonna be working harder. And then you
Right.
think of, like, with nutrition, right, that alters then the pH of what you want. That's gonna alter blood flow, and then that
Yeah.
affects everything from headaches to just ability to feel awake, right, and function. So,
Mhm.
alright, let's do the timer.
Okay.
I'll just guide you. So if you wanna this one I find if you wanna close your eyes if you can,
Okay.
and
I'm
then
gonna also sit in my chair instead of stand. Love my standing desk, but I'm gonna move to sitting.
yes, gotta move back and forth.
Yes. And before we start, well, this is lowering. You said something about yoga is sometimes a good place to start, but sometimes not. Say more about that.
I, oh no, all my fellow yoga teachers would be like, "Oh." But I would there are a lot of techniques which are super cool, obviously thousands of years old. Um, but in terms of, like, if we think of inverse breathing, which means that instead of inhaling, you expand, instead you inhale, you constrict, it just affects how your diaphragm is moving and therefore how much air
Mhm.
you're bringing in, how much carbon dioxide your body can tolerate. there are certain techniques that will accentuate these breathing patterns that may be adding to a higher, faster breathing rate, a higher stress level.
Yeah.
Ujjayi breath where you kinda constrict and you're like, so you sound like Darth Vader,
Mhm.
um, is great, but also if you're breathing more with your scalenes in your neck, you're not moving from the muscles, which are your intercostals and diaphragm, which are the muscles designed for breathing. So it's like if you were lifting and doing bicep curls with your hamstrings, your body
Yeah.
would feel a little sore. It's a similar
Yeah.
thing. So it's a beautiful practice and, like, keep going. I would never be like, "Don't do breathe at yoga," but it's like an awareness where
Yeah.
if you start to like, I had a client who did a lot of breath, around kundalini breathing, a lot of, like, very fast, more of this, like, bellows breath, and we were practicing doing a lot of exhales just to help build her ability to for her heart rate variability, as well as to allow for there to be less stress in the shoulders.
Yeah.
And it was, like, because of the practice from yoga, it was really hard. We had to retrain, right? It's like that muscle memory.
Mhm.
Her body
Mhm.
to, like, allow for the breath, allow for the intercostals to come on, and not the, like, I don't wanna get too technical, but just not allowing certain parts of the body that are meant to breathe, like, to breathe,
Yeah.
and that can then affect, posture, how you move through the world and
Right.
other things.
Right. So many
It's
things.
just
I'm
things to keep in
wondering
mind. Yeah.
yeah, I'm just wondering out loud, like, how many clients, patients have I supported it over the years with high blood pressure
Mm,
via, like, diet and lifestyle, primarily the levers are food and exercise,
100%.
where I'm also learning, like, oral microbiome plays a huge role, but I'm also wondering now how many of these folks could have improved their numbers by double digits with breath.
There's a
Now
lot
we
of
know.
yeah,
Now
there's
we
a
know.
yeah. I did one that was a workshop just about breath work and blood pressure, and,
Yeah.
it the studies so there's a lot of studies that exist because they sell, these machines that will provide like, if anyone has had asthma and you breathe into the
Mm,
spirometer, it's a similar idea, but you get that pressure feedback, which is
mm.
great for helping to build that strength of those muscles around the lungs, right? Also show that and there's this, like, cool, gorgeous ball where I'm obsessed with, love it. I actually this weekend got to go meet the woman who does that, and I was like, "Ah!" Fa
Oh,
It was
that's
so
so
great. It
cool.
was so cool. She was in New York City, and normally she doesn't do a lot in person, so it was really neat.
That's awesome.
Anyway, but with that, you practice a lot with, like, blowing up, like you mentioned a balloon, perfect example,
Mhm.
where you're just showing the body just, like, that resistance isn't a bad thing. That's what a lot of people will do for blood pressure because it helps you slow down the breath. So to bring it
Mhm.
back to this idea of, like, counting your breaths, the idea is if you can stop over breathing, that then has the effect on the how the blood's flowing, how the heart rate's doing, and
Yeah.
all the contributors to higher, blood pressure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm ready.
Okay.
Let me adjust this and then okay.
Let me pull this up. Okay, so all you're gonna do, naturally by bringing your breath to it or your mind to it, your breath is gonna get a little bit slower, which is good, but
Mhm.
I'm gonna start the clock now, and we're just gonna breathe and have breath awareness. So 1 breath cycle is an inhale and exhale, and that's it. And you're just gonna notice how many of them you do before I say stop. Okay. All right. And then when you're ready, just begin. And you can breathe through the nose, the mouth, whatever feels good. You're just counting here. And as I do this too, just notice the tension, like let the face rest. And you're not trying to slow it down. You're just letting it do its thing. 17 more seconds. and then complete your next cycle. Okay, so how many did you get?
16, I think, but I might have started before you said go.
Yeah, it's all good. Okay, cool. So 16-ish. So the idea was then you would do another one just to have that lovely
Mhm.
little median. And for an adult, what they found this data through Whoop, which is like that wearable,
Yeah,
which is honestly, it's a really good data collector. Like they have such, and again, the population that wears it usually is more um, movement oriented, right?
yeah,
So it could even be skewed a little bit
for
lower
sure.
than normal. But for an adult, it was 12 to 20 is like average and that's at rest, right? Like,
Right.
moving about. And then for working out, it's like 35 to 45, right? So if you're like intensity, high level,
Mhm,
um, and then for a child, it's gonna be more breaths, right? Because 'Cause they're developing that, and so 16 to, like, 25.
mhm.
Um, there's data from, like, 10 years ago when they did this in studies before the WHOOP, and that was lower, and then there was data before that and again, it's showing just, like, how our life in terms of lifestyle, in terms of technology exposure, all the things that and all of, your clients, it's just not necessarily the best for the breath. So
Yeah, or the
and then
body.
that perpetuates these chronic
Yeah,
chronic issues, so
yeah. What
mm.
do you I have 2 other questions related. It's coming into my space around airway stuff.
Oh,
My
yeah.
watch taught me a lot. I was, like, very resistant to it, and it showed
Mhm.
me at a really low HRV, which you and I have talked about. I've done a lot to work on that, and I plan on writing and sharing more on Substack eventually. But I also my respiration rate, I think, is higher than it's supposed to be at night, and I'm a grinder. I'm
Oh,
pretty sure I don't snore or anything, and I don't meet any of the traditional criteria for sleep apnea,
yep.
but I'm pretty sure I have some airway stuff or some breathing stuff going on at night, so I'm kind of working on that for myself, and there's also, like, practitioner groups I'm in where they're talking about airway stuff,
Cool,
and I'm gonna
okay.
go have my children evaluated to make sure because, like, that's the age you're supposed to do it,
Mhm.
and there's just
Yep.
so much more information now, so
Mm.
I guess what are your thoughts on that? What are you seeing? Obviously, there's still so much we can do. And if you're an adult and you should have had an airway intervention when you were a kid, too late, fine, make peace with that. But
Yeah.
is it relevant? Is it as big as we think it is? Is it only going to get bigger talking about airway? Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna get bigger, I think, because there's definitely a market for it too, right?
Yeah.
And so right now what I would say is I just did a workshop about sleep and breath, and this was like a big
Mm,
question that I had going into it too. And like the studies on it are not really there yet. There's not a huge correlation. There's some causation, but not correlation. And there's a fair amount of like smaller sample size, but not like meta review of
hmm.
this, like 20 studies where it can distill it down to one variable. That being said, with the airway piece, your nose has that nitric oxide, right, which is this magic. It dilates those blood vessels, right? That in itself is magic. It's going to help with like these different bacteria, viral components, right? Your nose is designed to do the breathing, your mouth isn't. So that and will always be helpful.
Hmm.
I do play with, so it's so funny you're saying that because I right now I'm playing with all the different like nose strips. So I reached out to
Hmm.
4 different companies and I've been trying each one just to kind of like see pros and cons of each and just how they affect. But I will say I do it at night. That's when I do it. Or if I remember, I'll do it like take it on a hike. And I feel that shift like in my ability.
Really?
A lot of people come to me with an inhale ceiling. And what that really means is
Mm,
like you inhale and you feel like you can't breathe anymore, whether that's your rib baskets can't go full 360, feel like there's something kind of like at that xiphoid process, that bony part near the breastbone
hmm.
of like, I can't get air past there. A lot of that, there's a few different things, but one is airway related, right? So even if you try now, you'll breathe in through your mouth, you can get a lot more volume in, right? You're blowing that air in, and then you can exhale, let it go. If you try to do it through the nose, get a lot more resistance, which is actually really good because you're slowing the
Yeah.
breath down. But that resistance doesn't feel good when you're used to
No.
right? And when you
Yeah.
think that oxygen is what you need, right? So I used to think that too, especially I grew up asthmatic. I was like, I want my breath in.
Mhm.
Like I remember
Yeah.
when I was playing basketball, I was like, just trying to get all the air in. Not necessarily
Mhm.
the way to go. So the nasal strips that they have where they open up, like you'll put this on and it opens the nostrils.
Yeah.
There's something to it because it's like anything, like, if you think of bowling, you put your gutters on, that's kinda what it is to me. You're like, "Let me show you
Yeah.
what it feels like," especially if you're an adult, you didn't have these different things done. You're like, "Whoa, I can, like, take that inhale in, I can have that full expansive inhale, and this
Mhm.
this is what it feels like? Whoa," like, that in itself is really cool to witness, so I'm all for it,
That's
and then
amazing.
I think, tracking it, right, for sleep and such. Again, in terms of trackers that are out there, it's really like, there's a lot of pushback in terms of, like, what
Mhm.
actually is a good tracker unless you're, like, in a lab, and then that brings up
Yeah.
environmental things. But there is a great book that I talked about too in the workshop. It's what is it? Drink, Breathe, Sleep, Drink, Breathe. So that
Okay.
is am I, like, having no, it's not Sleep, Drink, Breathe.
You can always send it to me after. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yes, it's gonna bother me now. Drink, breathe, I'm right. Okay, so he
Okay.
talks about that they're the 3 pillars of, like, wellness, and this guy calls himself Doctor Sleep, whatever. I'm like, "Okay." But, it's cool because there is that interconnectivity of the, like, sleep in terms of circadian rhythm with breath, right?
Mhm.
Less about, like, if you do this breathing technique, it's gonna change your rhythm. That's not how it's necessarily working in the brain, but a lot in terms of the behavior of, like, building in the practice. And that itself is cool, and then you add in the airway component, maybe put a little mouth tape on, and you're gonna
Mhm.
show your body that, "Oh, I can breathe through my nose." And then like anything, 6 to 8 weeks, the body starts to remember that, and you can
Mhm.
get better. They are showing it seems to lead to better sleep. What they mean by that is usually qualified through, I think it's the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index. It's used in
Mm.
most of the studies, and it asks questions like, how many night hours do you sleep? How many hours do you lie in bed? How easy is it for you to fall asleep? How
Yeah.
easy is it for you to fall asleep after you wake up in the middle of the night, right? Like, very specific
Mhm.
because each one has a different correlation, especially with food and sugar. I know that's a big piece. Hydration. So I think that where we're getting is, like, everything's interconnected, and how do we kind of
Yeah.
just slowly move through it and not get overwhelmed? Because in the end,
Totally.
then we want some movement, whatever that looks like, some practice.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Do you have a recommended I've used, like, just the standard, like, ones that stick on your nose when I've been sick. You can
Oh,
hear my
yeah,
voice
yeah,
here.
yeah, those
And
are
they
cool.
hurt so bad to take them off, and I'm like,
Oh, yeah,
I'm working
it
hard
does.
to, like, hydrate my skin, and then I just take off 3 layers every morning with this stupid thing. So, do you have some of the brands that you like? It
Yeah,
looks like you had a reusable one.
this one, I have one that is reusable, well, half reusable is Intake,
Okay.
um,
And you
and
like that one?
I like it, except you need magnetic. It connects by a magnet, and then you put
Oh,
those
alright.
on your nose, and you have to rebuy those. Not super
Mhm.
sustainable and kinda
Yeah.
inexpensive. I think these are the Dream let me make sure, Dream Recovery Strips. Yeah. These are one-time use, but they're easier to put on and off. Great
Oh, I
if you're,
like
like,
that.
traveling. Great I like where if you're gonna go like, I wore them cross country skiing. It's great. It's fun. It's
Nice.
easy. They have a great mouth tape I like too because it's
Mm.
vertical versus the horizontal. I feel claustrophobic when it's like the
Yeah.
full I don't like that. Then there's one other, I can't remember the name, I can send it to you, but that like touts it for the skincare piece. That's why I think
Mhm.
that they will continue to grow because skincare is like a big self-care ritual, and then
Yeah.
you add in breathing and everyone's like, "Yay,"
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that one I liked. It was a little oily for me, like, I didn't like it on my skin, but those are my 3, and I'm still waiting for the other company, so I'll let you know
Yeah.
what I
Okay.
find, but I would say,
Very
like,
cool.
this is easier than Intake, in my opinion,
Okay.
and also,
Cool.
like, it just I mean, it's still a
It's
waste of
so much
clothes.
less waste than the one that I got that's like it's just like that generic, like, red and blue box or something,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like the
yeah.
drugstore ones. It's huge. I mean, it's like this much material. That one is so much smaller, so much more pleasant,
Smaller,
like
it sticks,
and
it
it's gonna
opens.
actually stick. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say the intake with anything with magnets, so I will say, is gonna open the
More.
passageways more, like, in terms of the actual nostrils.
Yeah.
Not nasal passageways, excuse me, the nostrils. That'd be cool if it could do that, but, no, it will just
Yeah.
open those up more so you'll feel it.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but, yeah, those would be my recommendations in that realm of what to do
Okay.
with that, and then the other thing that I will, because I told you when we talked before, like, the
Yeah.
Courgeous ball is,
I
like,
bought one.
it's the best, and like, you can use one to you learn how to build that practice, and it can start from where I'm, obviously thoracic region, we wanna work on the rib baskets, but comes down to pelvic floor, which also is a
Yeah.
huge, huge piece with this too,
Yeah.
because of how fascia, like the form of connective tissue, how those lines run in our body, and if we
Mhm.
have any form of surgery, anything like that, it's just gonna cause a little shift in that fabric, which isn't bad, but when it's chronically like that, it's gonna pull on other things.
Right.
And this just it's so subtle, that's why I love it, it's not painful. So your body's not driven into sympathetic by the pain. Sometimes with rolling, we get a little like, "Oof, I love this."
I haven't
Um,
even thought about it that way, and I
yeah.
do use my tennis ball and stuff. Oh, well, I
Yeah,
appreciate that you
those are
said
great
that.
too. Yeah, like I have
But what if it does cause a lot of pain, and I'm still, like, that old school
yeah.
person where I'm like, "The more it hurts, the more relief I'm gonna get," which I logically know is not correct.
But I know, but it feels sometimes you're like, "I just gotta get in there," right? It
Get
feels
in there.
really good,
Yeah, yeah,
especially like the
yeah.
upper traps, like
Yes, that's exactly where it is for me. Yeah.
yeah. Yep, and that's cool too, because like, in terms of I'm gonna forget the name of the nerve, but one of the cranial nerves innervates directly there, which is very interesting,
Oh.
so it doesn't go through the spine, then out, which was most nerves. So, what's interesting is when that's super tight, you're having like, that's just circular you talk about stress loop, that adds to it as well, so
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a big problem area for me. Maybe that's contributing to my low HRV, but I'm working on it and making progress.
Good.
I've increased by like 20 points on average, which I'm like very proud of.
Awesome,
But
and what have you been doing? What's the secret sauce for your body?
I
Because it's
don't
different for
even
each
know,
body.
man. Awareness has been super helpful. I've done the safe and sound protocol. I've done work
Okay.
with like many different like practitioners and coaches. Not necessarily on a lot of breathwork stuff though, a little bit. And just like yeah, just trying to kinda just do everything, a lot of mindset work and all that too. So I don't know yet, but I'll definitely report back. But we'll wrap up. I like to ask every guest one last question of what do you wanna be doing when you're 80 years old?
When I'm 80, what I'm doing now, I'd love to
Breathing?
yeah, breathing. I still wanna be a teacher or holder of space in some sort,
Yeah.
um, mothering in whatever way that looks like for me, and,
Mhm.
being able to get outside and, like, hang out with the trees, take deep breaths there, and work for a world where we're all breathing, like,
Yeah,
that's the goal, and, dancing, 100%, I wanna make sure I'm still dancing then. So,
I love
that
it.
I will say that helps me I don't know if that helps you, but I've noticed with my heart rate variability watching it, anytime I'm dancing, it seems to go up a little, so
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, that
it's a
makes
healer.
all the sense. Yeah.
Yep.
Amazing. Well, Sarah, you're such a gift. Thank you so much.
Nice.
Your talents and treasures and passions, I hope you reach as many people as possible in this world.
Yes.
So thank you
Well,
so much.
thank you, it was so fun breathing with you.
I know. Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, totally,
I want
and
to know where can everybody find you? So do you still teach yoga classes? You're a practitioner of breath coaching. So I'll make sure people can find you there. But if you any social medias you use or anything like that, shout them out and I'll also put them in the show notes.
perfect. I will put those I have a Substack, which I'm, like, reinvigorating,
Great.
and
Awesome.
slowbreathworks.com is great,
Mhm.
my newsletter there, and I'm on Instagram too, as well, Sarah Breathes Slow, um but I'm using that less and less, but I'm there. Yeah, just reach out. But I would say one of those places you'll find me. And
Yeah,
then I
amazing.
do workshops, online, and then I'm gonna be leading some breath work in Saratoga at the sauna, if anyone's interested, which is great because that's great for mitochondrial function, they say. Jury's still out, but I find it's very beautiful and
I
helpful,
love
so
it. You're doing it at the floating sauna?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
so cool. I'm
yeah,
gonna
so
find the link for that.
yeah, I totally I'll send it your way, but yeah, just
Okay.
honestly go to my website, sign up for my newsletter or and that shows how everything's evolving, so
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And everyone, you can find Sarah in the show notes or in anything she said today. So thank you.
awesome.
Have a good
Thanks,
rest of the
Ellie.
week.
Yes, you
Talk to
too.
you soon.
Bye.
Bye.